Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests attending the workshop today and those joining us online to ensure the proper organization of the event, please be seated, and we have a few housekeeping notes. Those joining us online, please use the backdrop sent to you in advance, and also please include the information on your names and your affiliation. We also remind you that only the camera and microphone of the speaker will be turned on. Others should be and will be muted and turn off your camera. At the thematic conference today, we have simultaneous interpretation. You can choose either English or Vietnamese using the language function in the symbol of the globe. Then you can choose interpretation channels that suits you. We will record the contents of the workshop for later communication purposes. Those joining us online can send us questions or comments via the chat box together with your name and your affiliation. We will either discuss your question in the Q&A session or we will respond to you by email later on. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests and all participants who participate in this workshop, both offline and those who are joining us online. First, on behalf of the organizing committee, allow me to convey our warmest greetings to all of you joining the workshop today. We wish the workshop a great success. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, in the last 2 decades, the world has witnessed rapid urbanization, increase of population in urban area. It is predicted that by 2050, 60% of the world population will live in major urban areas, creating tremendous pressure on infrastructure, transport, energy, and increase in sewage and waste as a result of overpopulation. So creating a healthy and sustainable urban living environment is crucial to provide a quality living condition for urban residents. In the context of the global climate change and also the COVID-19, understanding changing policy and practice also required to create a healthy living environment for the people. In Vietnam, we see the same situation. And the topic we discussed today will be very closely associated with other urban areas with rapid population growth and construction in Vietnam. We require a multidisciplinary approaches combining both civil engineering, health sector, and social sciences in order to understand how to design buildings in ways that are urban, energy efficient, and friendly to human beings. So the workshop on policy and practices on the interaction between users and buildings to promote healthy living environment in Vietnam urban areas has been organized to discuss those matters. The workshop is organized by the Center of Competence in Sustainable Building, CCSB-VN, with technical advice from Universität of Hamburg, Germany, and this will be the first in a series of workshops entitled "Health-Oriented Policy and Sustainable Building Practices to Promote Well-Being and Green Urban Governance in Vietnam," or HOPE, funded by the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, or CAS. Please allow me to introduce the distinguished guests joining us today from the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, or CAS, Mr. Florian Feyerabend, resident representative of CAS. From the HOPE project, Dr. Michael Weibel, the Senior Technical Advisor of the HOPE project and head of the second components of the project in Hamburg Universitat. From Ministry of Civil Engineering, Mr. Nguyễn Khánh Long, Head of Solid Waste Departments of Technical Infrastructure, Ministries of Civil Engineering. From the University of Civil Engineering of Hanoi, Professor Nguyễn Hoàng Giang, Vice Rector of HUCE. We also welcome the presence of leading experts in different fields. Allow me to introduce Professor Vinh from Vietnam Association of Planning, Professor Trần Hiếu Nhuệ, Association of Nature and Environment in Vietnam, Professor Lưu Đức Hải, Association of Economy and Environment of Vietnam, Madam Trần Thị Thanh Ý from Vietnam Association of Urban Planning. And we're also pleased to welcome representatives from the HOPE project also joining us today. First, allow me to introduce Professor Nguyễn Hoàng Giang, Vice Rector of Hanoi University of Civil Engineering, to deliver the opening remark, please. Mr. Florian Phairaban, resident representative, the cast in Vietnam, Mr. Nguyễn Khánh Long, Head of Solid Waste, Department of Technical Infrastructure, Ministry of Civil Engineering, Dr. Michael Weibel, Senior Technical Advisor of the HOPE project, and the representative from different line ministries, associations, researchers, and enterprises, and welcome to all of you. First, on behalf of HUCE, we are pleased to welcome all of you to the workshop on policies and practices on the interactions between users and buildings to promote sustainable and healthy living environment in Vietnamese cities. This is the first or launching event of the HOPE project on health-oriented policies and sustainable building practices to promote well-being and green urban governance in Vietnam. You know that urban population in the world has increased rapidly, and it is estimated that 2/3 of the world population will live in urban area by 2050, just creating a series of challenges in managing urban space in ways with tremendous impact on human health. A healthy living environment, urban environment, is crucial to bring happiness to people, particularly in mega cities. And in the context of the global climate change and most recently the COVID-19, understanding about the changes in policy and practices should be substantially improved. And this topic is particularly crucial for rapidly developing cities, both in population and building practices, both in the world and also in Vietnam. Ladies and gentlemen, at the UN COP or COP26, Vietnam officially announced the commitment to net zero emission by 2050. To fulfill this commitment, Vietnam must undertake powerful measures and applications of managerial and technological solutions in ways that suit the Vietnamese context, and in which we emphasize the cooperation with reputable global partners to develop green economy, circular economy, and digital economy. In this context, the HOPE project has been developed based on a cooperation between CAS, Hamburg University, and Hanoi University of Civil Engineering to understand policies towards sustainable health and towards green urban governance in Vietnam. The project is administered by the Center for the Competence in Sustainable Buildings based at our university. And this is a very important cooperation for us. And the CCSB Center was established in 2019, creating a forum to share interdisciplinary knowledge from different fields and connecting state managers, enterprises, and researchers. And the Project Hope is very lucky to receive funding from CAS in 3 years from 2022 to 2024. On this occasion, I wish to convey our sincere thanks to Mr. Florent Feyerabend, representative of the CAS in Vietnam, for your trust, for trusting our university to be the partner, and in particular the CCSB Center as the implementing partner of this project. We hope that the HOPE project and the CCSB Center will be a forum for experts to share our experiences, to share the philosophy on healthy and sustainable building practices towards well-being and green urban governance. Once again, we wish to convey our gratitude towards Mr. Florent Feyerabend, towards our experts and all participants joining the first workshop of the HOPE project today. We wish you a good health and a great success to the conference and also to the HOPE project. I wish the project a very fruitful cooperation.
Thank you, Associate Professor Nguyễn Hoàng Giang. And I'd like to have a few words about the Hanoi University of Civil Engineering with over 60 years of training and also the receiver of many international funded projects. And Dr. Nguyễn Hoàng Giang has contributed a great deal to promoting international cooperation projects in applying and promoting the international experiences in urban development in Vietnam. Coming up next, I would like to invite Mr. Florian Feyerabend, country representative of CAS Institute.
The Associate Professor Nguyen Hong Sang, Vice Rector of the Hanoi University of Civil Engineering, Dr. Michael Weibel from Hamburg Universität, Honorary Professor Dr. Roderick J. Lawrence from the University of Geneva, distinguished speakers and commentators, both on the ground and online, dear participants, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon from Vietnam and good morning to Hamburg and Geneva. On behalf of the Konrad Adenauer Foundation or Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, allow me to welcome you to today's event, which is to kick off the new partnership between the CAS and the Hanoi University of Civil Engineering, or how we call it, HUCE. HUCE becomes one of our 2 new partners in 2022. That's something which is not happening all the time. We more invest in long-term relationships and partnerships, so I'm very honored to have a new partner on board. But first of all, allow me to say a few words about ourselves, about CAS, because not all of you might be familiar with the Konrad Adenauer Foundation. Of course, our partners joining from Hamburg, they are very well aware. Konrad Adenauer Foundation, or Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, and therefore with the acronym KAS or CAS, as it's commonly known under the German abbreviation, is a German political foundation closely affiliated with the ruling and not ruling anymore party of CDU of Chancellor Angela Merkel. We have been the ruling party on the federal level from 2005 to 2021, and now we are in a new role as the opposition party, and KAS is the think tank of that party. We are not only a think tank, we are also a consultancy agency and a dialogue platform, and we are also a do tank, so we also conduct projects on the ground. We connect people and ideas, and we build networks for peoples with ideas. And we achieved that by being on the ground present. And that means not only being on the ground present in Germany, but also abroad. And investing, I already mentioned it, in long-term partnerships. So we don't frequently change our partners. Currently, and if I look in my manuscript, I'm supposed to say that we are running 111 offices around the world. But unfortunately, with the sad events unfolding with the war in Ukraine, I have to correct that number and say that currently the precise number would be more 107, because we were forced to close 2 of our offices in St. Petersburg and Moscow. And of course, the offices in Kharkiv in eastern Ukraine and in Kiev currently cannot work as usual. In Vietnam, we have been present for almost 30 years. In fact, next year we will celebrate our 30th anniversary. And allow me just like 3 keywords about our main focus on a global level. We are focusing on 3 aspects: security, and this is a multidimensional definition that we apply; democracy, as a foundation of the Christian Democratic Union; and innovation. And it also includes all things related to sustainability and social market economy. Against this background, in Vietnam, we are very glad to have a long-lasting relationship, and allow me to mention just a few of them, with the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam, with the Ministry of Justice. In fact, I just returned today in this morning from Da Nang, where we yesterday had a quite successful conference on the ICCPR, together with the Ministry of Justice, with the National Assembly of Vietnam, the Central Economic Commission of the Vietnam Communist Party, the Academy of Social Sciences. So you see a quite broad scope. And in 2020, we extended our partnership to 2 new partners: the National Center for Social Economic Information and Forecast, under the Ministry of Planning and Investment, and of course, HUSE, the Hanoi University of Civil Engineering. Dear participants, the topics of energy, climate, and environmental policy are of central importance to the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, but of course not only to us. This topic is not only a regulatory challenge, but also a core concern for the preservation of the creation and the protection of the livelihoods of current and future generations. We therefore want to provide impetus for a sustainable approach to the environment at national and international level. Environmental protection is a cross-sectional task that places previous fields of activities of CAS in the areas of development, economy, security, and energy in a changed context, and at the same time ties it with the existing fields of our activities. In general, one can say that CAS always likes to work interdisciplinary. We are also living in a world where rapid technological changes and breakthrough innovations are shaping the world order of tomorrow. Leadership in technological advancements has become a geopolitical struggle and a question of competitiveness. Innovation is therefore the key to success in the world of tomorrow. And innovation is much more than that. Innovation is a requirement to transform our economies into sustainable, clean, and green economies, and to mitigate the global challenge of climate change. From 2021, from last year, CAS Vietnam and its partners have been implementing a number of activities at which innovation is our core message, given the fact that Vietnam is among the most dynamic countries in Southeast Asia. Vietnam's economy and society is undergoing rapid changes and becoming ever more closely integrated into the fast evolving regional and global production and knowledge networks. This has most of the time advantages, but the pandemic has already been mentioned. It also sometimes bears some risk with it. At the same time, Vietnam will be one of the countries most affected by climate change. Just last week, I was in Ho Chi Minh City. That's not directly in the Mekong Delta, but if you pay attention to the developments that the Mekong Delta will face, you're very well aware. And in order for Vietnam to prosper and succeed in a competitive environment and to cope with the challenge of climate change, it might be useful to analyze examples of innovation systems from Europe and to also deal with the topic of sustainability. The urbanization trend in Vietnam is very dynamic. I just mentioned it. I returned from Da Nang this morning. And I don't remember, I haven't been to Da Nang 30 years ago, but if you would have been to Da Nang 30 years ago, the city would have looked very different, I'm sure. And last week I was in Ho Chi Minh City, the first time since 2006, and the changes are quite significant. I have here in my manuscript the fact figure that 40% of Vietnamese population is actually already living in urbanized areas. And our MC, Ms. Hoa, and also Professor Zhang mentioned it, that there are predictions that by 2050 on a global level, 60% of world population will be urban residents. There have been some important results and achievements in Vietnam. However, difficulties and challenges remain. And just a few to be named. The quality of urban areas has not been paid significant attention to. Technical infrastructure and social infrastructure are unsynchronized or overloaded or not yet fully developed. When I just think about mass rapid transport systems or metro lines. Environmental pollution is an issue. When I returned today to Hanoi, and there was no more sun as compared to Da Nang, but a lot of fog and smog. You can see it with your own eyes. And there's also, of course, the inefficient use of natural resources and energy. In addition, the urban system of Vietnam is facing many new challenges from the impact of climate change and the COVID-19 pandemic. And those are posing many new problems in urban planning, construction, and development. Therefore, a transdisciplinary new thinking is needed. Dear participants, in recognition of all these challenges mentioned above, CAS Vietnam, the Konrad Adenauer Foundation, therefore found the proposal submitted by HUSE last year as timely and highly significant. And as a result, a new partnership is to start today. A 3-year tripartite project between Konrad Adenauer Stiftung KES Vietnam, HUSE, and the University of Hamburg, Mr. Weibel is joining us from there, on health-oriented policies and sustainable building practices to promote well-being and green urban governance in Vietnam. In short, HOPE, a very nice acronym, was approved, and today is the kickoff. This day is important and meaningful to us, and we hope and expect that it will contribute to the green and sustainable urban governance discourse in Vietnam. I'm coming to an end, and I would like to thank the technical team from Hamburg University, Dr. Weibel, and also, of course, Tui, who has been a partner with the Association of Vietnamese Cities with us in the past years, for your great connection, bringing us together with HUSE. And in fact, actually, it's not the first time that we are cooperating with HUSE. My colleague Fong reminded me that 7 years ago, we had a German member of parliament providing a guest lecture at your university, but this is the first structured multi-annual cooperation that we are starting today. So thank you very much to HUSE and to the University of Hamburg. And of course, I should not forget to mention also my own very own team of Konrad Adenauer Foundation, Niet to my right, and then of course Fong and Thuyen on the left. Without my CAS team, we wouldn't be able to start new partnerships. We strongly believe that our tripartite collaboration will make our project a great success. And with this, I will close, and I wish all of you, online and offline, good health, good luck, an interesting discussion today, and of course, great success for our cooperation project.
Thank you, Mr. Florian Faraben, for your great contribution in promoting CAS projects in Vietnam over the past 30 years, especially. Thank you for promoting CAS cooperation with Vietnamese think tank research institutions and universities. And now I would like to invite Dr. Michael Weibel, Senior Technical Advisor for HOPE Project.
Hello. Hello. Do you hear me? Actually, we have prepared some slides to show during my talk. I would like to welcome everybody. I'm very happy and grateful that this event, kickoff event, can take place today. We prepared this HOPE project already for more than 1 year. And the idea was, against the backdrop of the COVID-19 crisis, to contribute to health-oriented policies and sustainable building practices to promote well-being and green urban governance in Vietnam. So bring together the dimension of health with the built environment. I think that's very important, and it became very clear in times of COVID-19 that a healthy living environment is essential to provide a good quality of life for urban citizens. And that's basically what we all aim for. We want to contribute that people have a good life in the city. We identify to achieve that not so much theoretical or scientific knowledge. We lack implementation knowledge. We lack action knowledge. And so we have to think of new governance mechanism of urban green governance to promote a healthy living environment. That's why we want to aim to build up cross-cutting and comprehensive action knowledge through a lecture series in the first year of the HOPE project and further activities in the coming years. Thanks so much for Konrad Adenauer Stiftung to support this project. I think it's needed, it's important, and we are at the beginning. And I think we and hope that we will be able to achieve more action knowledge in a transdisciplinary way in the near future. The managing institution of the HOPE project is the so-called CCSB-VN. That's the newly founded institution, the Competence Center for Sustainable Building in Vietnam, which has been founded as part of a federal government-funded project from Germany, Kamasek project, 2 years or 3 years ago. And this Competence Center for Sustainable Building in Vietnam wants to bundle transdisciplinary expertise of sustainable building knowledge in Vietnam. And also by means of CCSB-VN, we want to transfer this knowledge to diverse areas of scientific application and to the general public. So we perceive the CCSB-VN as a cross-cutting institution overcoming prevalent silo mentalities and to bring together this knowledge of sustainable building, and in the case of the HOPE project, bring it together with the dimension of well-being and health. So our overall vision is to develop the CCSB-VN as Vietnam's leading think tank. And I heard from Florian Feierabend also as a do tank. Yeah, I didn't know this expression before, as a leading think tank and as a leading do tank in terms of sustainable building in Vietnam. And I'm very happy and grateful that HUTZE and Hamburg University joined forces to do that with generous support from Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. Thanks so much. That's all from my side. And I very much appreciate being here. And I'm very much looking forward to the keynote presentation and panel discussion in the further course of the HOPE 1 webinar. Thanks so much.
Sincere thanks to Dr. Michael, the senior technical advisor of the HOPE project, who has participated in a wide range of projects on sustainable buildings in Vietnam. We're going to make a slight modification to the agenda. We're going to have the photo session first because some will have to leave this workshop very soon, but and for that reason, may I invite you to the stage for the photo session very, very quickly. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated so that we can begin the presentation session. Now, we will have 3 presentations in total from Vietnamese and international speakers. Each speaker will have 20 minutes, which will be followed by a panel discussion with the participations of international experts and 3 Vietnamese experts, and the roundtable discussion will be coordinated by Dr. Nguyễn Thu Thủy from the University of Hamburg. And then we will have Q&A, and we have the wrapping up. And all the questions and comments from the audience, we will have the opportunity to respond to your question during the final Q&A. Now let's go to the presentation. May I invite the first speaker, Professor Roderick Lawrence from the Department of Economics and Social Sciences, University of Geneva, Switzerland, and also members of experts on interdisciplinary research from Switzerland Academy of Science. We will talk about promoting healthy and sustainable urban environments, please.
Thank you. Thank you. And let me welcome everybody to my presentation today. And I would like to thank the organizers for giving me the opportunity to share some of my ideas with you in the 20 minutes ahead of us. Many of these ideas have been explained in references which I have tabled at the end of my presentation. Can I have the next slide, please? So the plan of my presentation today is, after this introduction, it's very important to start thinking about the relationships between health, built environments, and sustainability, and what we know. And as we just heard, we talk a lot about think tanks, and the term of do tank was mentioned. And I'm suggesting that we must better link what we know with what we do. And much of my work has been concerned with that particular challenge of bridging the divide between knowledge and practice. And then I would like to briefly consider how we connect health and built environments to sustainable development, because in my opinion, the United Nations 2030 Agenda enables us to do that with a conceptual and an institutional framework that has been endorsed by around 190 countries. And then I would like to use the specific case of renovation and reuse of buildings in our cities and contrast that with urban renewal and whole-scale demolition, which has dominated urban development in many countries since the last 50 years. And I think there's an important question here about what is sustainable and what is not sustainable, and how the choices we make can influence health and quality of life. It's not just about environmental protection, but health is a key component. And that's why I'm using the transdisciplinary concept of the residential context of health to understand the complex bundle of variables that need to be accounted for in specific cities, and indeed in specific neighborhoods within cities, in order to move forward with this very important agenda in the 21st century. Can I have the next slide, please? On this slide, we see an interesting diagram by colleagues in England that help us to think about health, built environments, and sustainable development. And I'm coming from human ecology, and that uses a people environment systems framework. And I think this framework is very important and pertinent for dealing with thinking about these connections between health, built environments, and sustainable development. We're talking about natural ecosystems. And if you see here, we have a people-centered approach. And from that center, we move out to the household, the community, the local economy, the built environment, the natural environment, and the biosphere with a global system. And this is a complex network and systemic analysis and representation of the world in which we live. And it gives us the opportunity to see how both natural and human ecosystem influence health and livability. And what is equally important is that we're talking about the local, the national, and the global connectedness of these challenges. So when we heard about air pollution earlier in the presentation this morning, it can be indoors, it can be in a city, and it can be in a whole region of the world. And we know that these influences need to be understood at these different geopolitical levels, because the power and influence of the private sector, politicians, and the public changes across these geopolitical levels. So let's move on now to the next slide and consider the question, what do we know? And when we think about health, there's been a lot of work since the 1970s and 1980s, which has been interdisciplinary in kind. And on the right-hand side, we have health status, which is the outcome of the health of an individual, a household, or a population. And if you look at the top right-hand corner, we find that environmental factors at the micro and macro level are estimated to account for 25% of all those variables that influence health and quality of life. That's based on research by the World Health Organization and systemic reviews. On the other hand, below, we find that only 10% of health status is related to access to affordable primary health care. And that's basically because we go to doctors and nurses and health services when we are ill. They have a very minor role in our everyday lives until we become ill. And here in the center, we find that the living conditions, behavior, and lifestyle, including the genetic and personal characteristics, account for 40%. And these nested relationships here were generally considered, and the environment on the top right-hand corner was devalued until this research became very important in the 80s, 90s, and this century. So we know that the built environment and the natural environment are crucial, even more crucial than access to health and medical services, but they still do not have a high priority in political agendas of many governments around the world. And that's why the Healthy Cities Project is extremely important. And the World Health Organization launched the Healthy Cities Project in 1980. And it meant that it was mayors of cities that were working to promote health and quality of life of their citizens, not just ministries of health at the national level. So where we live, how we live, and what we eat is crucially important. And it varies between cities and within cities. So there are very important intra-urban differences. I don't know if some of you have seen the research which shows that life expectancy at birth in London can vary as much as 25 years between those with the best health and those with the highest health factors. Now, I'm suggesting to you, therefore, that if we know all this, how do we bring it together? How do we move forward to bridge this divide between knowledge and practice? And I'm suggesting you that the organizing principles of the United Nations 2030 agenda are extremely important, and that we need to connect SDG 3 and SDG 11, but then we need to connect it to the other SDGs. And this is the example that WHO shows with health at the center and the other 16 SDGs. And the importance of those SDGs will depend on the specific contextual conditions, the geography, the politics, the economy, the culture of the people in the city that we're concerned with. And this suggests a systemic approach. We cannot think about linear causality. We need to think about the multiple interrelationships between all these factors. In the next slide, I'm suggesting that one way of moving forward this agenda is by trying to think about the concept of co-benefit. And co-benefit is a concept endorsed by the World Health Organization, which enables us to think of win-win situations. It enables us to promote public adhesion to health promotion campaigns. It enables private investors to fund projects that are good for the public. And it also enables political leadership, because what we see, if we look at our diagram on the left, is that health is related to biodiversity and to social community and identity. And investments in health are also investments in the public good, and environmental ambient conditions are important. So the concept of co-benefit is a way of moving forward which will convince politicians, the private sector, and the public to move ahead with this important agenda of linking health and sustainable development. To the next slide, please, which shows that I'm suggesting that much of the discussion about rapid urbanization has been focused on new construction, and that is important because there is a supply need, but there's been too little concern about renovation and reuse of housing and other buildings. And I'm suggesting that whole-scale demolition has costs and it is unsustainable in many circumstances. For example, here we have the flaws of urban renewal programs that destroyed communities and impacted on mental health and quality of life, not to mention the short-term building cycle and the exorbitant cost to households who could no longer afford to live in the city. And on the next slide, if we move forward, I'm suggesting to you that investing in housing is also investing in health and quality of life. And this diagram shows that if we take housing that was built and is poor in terms of comfort, inefficient energy, and technology, we can invest in the housing stock to reduce energy consumption, improve energy consistency, and reduce illness and health in the home by reducing cold and damp inside the housing unit. We can also reduce resource use so that energy efficiency will reduce reliance on fossil fuels. That will reduce the carbon footprint. It will improve local air quality, both indoor and in the residential environment. And all of this means that we're going to have an impact on quality of life, on health, and on reducing expenditure on health services. And this we can inscribe at the global level in terms of the carbon footprint of the building construction sector, which, as it was noted, contributes around 30% of all greenhouse gas emissions in our world today. Now, in order to implement that kind of approach, which is being achieved and has been described in my recent work, we need to shift from sectorial disciplinary approaches to intersector and transdisciplinary collaboration. The next slide, please, shows that we need then to move from the concern about working in specific sectors to working collaboratively in order to move forward. Could I have the next slide, please? So that we're moving along the axis at the bottom here from a sectorial and discipline-based approach to an interdisciplinary approach, and indeed a transdisciplinary one, because we need to bring in the politicians, the private sector, and local communities, especially community associations. So the challenges that we're dealing about in this workshop today are not just scientific challenges, they are societal challenges. And that's why we have to move beyond academic and scientific knowledge, across scientific institutional borders, and bring in extra knowledge cultures in order to deal with the complex challenges of understanding and promoting health and sustainable urban environments. The next slide, please. I've suggested in a publication related to COVID-19 and the response of cities that this means that we need a triad of of collaboration between specialized knowledge cultures about health and medical illnesses, and that requires interdisciplinary research and collaboration. And we need research that is then taken on board with practices, and that involves governance in terms of political endorsement, governance in terms of political adhesion, but also the practitioners taking up the knowledge and using it creatively in projects. And last but not least, we need the individual and collective responsibilities of people. So without this kind of bringing together of the different kinds of knowledge, of the different know-how and professional practices, of the political endorsement and the contributions of the private sector, we will not move forward creatively with the United Nations 2030 agenda, particularly in promoting health and sustainable urban environments. The next slide, please. And I'm suggesting that today we're still in the logic of thinking about the puzzle. We've got the pieces and we're still having a lot of trouble bringing the pieces together. And we need to replace piecemeal contributions by societal challenges that are understood to be more than scientific problems, because they are wicked problems and they need coordinated co-action in order to implement change. The next slide, please. I would like to thank you for your attention in this presentation. I hope that I've given you some ideas that help to think about this very complex domain. And I'm recommending that you consult the references on the next slide after this one, which I've added to my presentation for those who would like to learn more about the very complex issues here, including my recent book published last year. Thank you all for your attention.
Professor Lawrence, your presentation took 20 minutes, but it provided us with a great wealth of knowledge, practical knowledge. It also showed us the great challenges in the 21st century facing the cities, as well as the correlation, close connection between human and environment, especially the important role of environment, not only natural, also man-made environment. And it also poses various questions in terms of approach, especially the interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary from different social dimensions. So we thank you very much, and we also relate what you talk about to the situation in Hanoi, the area which is home to hundreds of the very old public buildings, with a question of whether we should demolish and build a new building or should we renovate and reuse these buildings. Coming up next, I would like to introduce Dr. Lê Thái Hà, Vice Director of the National Institute of Occupational and Environmental Health and Director of the National Water Quality Monitoring Center, to have a presentation on healthy city in association with Sustainable Development Goals.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the organizer to invite me to come here to share about my knowledge and my experience about the healthy city in association with the Sustainable Development Goals of UN. I would like to talk about the existing situation of healthy city in Vietnam. It's not very familiar with Vietnam, but we still have some idea about this one. It's very newly. As we know, the urbanization is the future of the city. It's create a lot of major public health challenges in 21st century in the whole world, not only in Vietnam. It's very clear that is about the overall infrastructure system of housing, transportation, clean water and environment and hygiene. And environment pollution, especially about the environmental pollution, and about the climate change, and some extreme weather even cause the 60% of the greenhouse gas emission. And in Vietnam, we also to have this situation in now. It declines the quality of the life, impacting directly on human health and the urban. And it is very clear that urban health and SDGs should be prioritized in development policy in our country, in Vietnam especially. That is some major impact of human health, the urbanization for the human health. We can see that is very clear that the poor is maybe we may get the poor quality water supply and sanitation condition, and the poor drain system in adequate clean water demand. All of this one we can see that is about it's relating with the infrastructure of the city. The other one is the air pollution and global warming, and the poor quality of working environment. All of this measure when to put impact to infection disease, to go to some the head disease, to occupational accident injury, occupational disease. Is all of the disease is we can call that is a city disease. Very early, the WHO to give the definition of the health. We can see that health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So that we can see that not only to disease, that is the well-being, not only it's not only concerning to the disease, it's concerning to the mental and the social. Beside the disease, we can see that. And to understand the problem, the WHO very earlier in 1998 initiated the movement, the healthy city. It means that we define that a city that care about people's physical, mental, and social health is very closely related with the definition of the well-being of the people, the human health of the WHO. And from 2010, WHO launched the Urban Health Program, continuously to improve the urban health. And the people and health are at the heart of the urban development agenda. That is the WHO definition and also the guideline about the healthy city. And from 2015, WHO to list the main characteristics of healthy city. What about the healthy city? And all the characteristics is the relating with the SDG, with the 17 SDG. We can show, we can see it here. For example, a clean, safe physical environment of high quality, including housing quality. It's relating to the SDG 3. The last presentation, we also to hear that. SDG 3 is maybe to relating with the, is all of the SDG, it's as a SDG. And for the, and WHO implies that including housing quality. So that is some problems that we can discuss today about the housing quality. What does it mean about this one? Maybe we can discuss on the next time later. WHO listed about 11. You can see about 11 main characteristics of healthy city from 2015. We can see that one. all of this one is relating with the definition of WHO about the well-being, including the mental, the social, the physical, and some characteristic is relating to the both of the three, the physical, the mental, and the social. What about Vietnam? The situation of Vietnam for healthy city. First of all, I would like to talk that Vietnam, we have some guideline and many idea, many guideline, many regulation about the healthy city, but we have not a picture of this characteristic like the WHO listed here. We saw that we know that Vietnam have now to classification the urban according to degree of government. We classify it for five urban for 5 class of urban city. For the special one, we have Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City, as you know about this one, and the other class. Vietnam have, as I thought, Vietnam have some policy, some guidelines, some regulation about the healthy city. For example, for green building development policy in Vietnam, Vietnam also to have some certified about this one. The construction law also to relating to the government and encourage investment activities, certifying construction with use energy and resource economically and efficient. And to ensure the environment protection requirement. So we have some regulation about this one. We also to have regulation from Ministry of Construction about the National Technical Regulation on Energy Efficiency Buildings. Yeah. We have that one, but the existing how to apply it in the city is a problem. In Vietnam, you know, until now we have one green building that is the building of the UN in Kim Ma in Hanoi. This building is certified with the level of platinum with some characteristic such as sustainable feature of the building, green roof, landscape, require lawn irrigation, and the use water saving appliance, high performance lighting and air conditioning device. And the other one is a very important thing, and I think it's not many constructors in Vietnam pay attention about this one. It's the use law, VOC material, use recycling material and use photovoltaic panels, provide around 10% total energy needs. That is some why the UN building to consider that's the green building in Vietnam. That's some picture and some area of Vietnam in some city, but it is a very small cities. For example, that is a coffee city urban area. Projects in Ban Mê Thuột city, Đắk Lắk is a very small, not all in Ban Mê Thuột, not the whole of Ban Mê Thuột city, but it is very small city. You can see, so that is very green. We can call that a very green city. The project planning keeps the slope of the terrain and the existing vegetation intact without interfering with the natural topographical feature. Yeah, you can see. That is some picture about this one, and the other one, for the legal basics. We have some regulation and technical guidance on developing provincial level air quality management. We hear a lot about the quality management, the AQI in Hanoi every day. That is AQI in Hanoi is very poor, and there is some picture about this one. It's a particular matter. For example, now in Germany or in Geneva or in Switzerland, we pay attention about the very fine PM1, but now in Hanoi, you can see that is PM, you can see the PM, not PM10 or PM2.5, that is the particular matter with the high diameter. In Spain, we have some regulation, some law about the air quality for improving the air quality, but we still, that is the situation in Vietnam. Vietnam is also to participate in many projects about improving the quality of the healthy city, improving the air quality in the city. For example, Vietnam improving, participate on the Bread Light Clean Air Healthy Future. This project is the pay attention about the one problem is only the clean air, the air quality in the city, not 11 characteristic of the healthy city, but we can but also to participate about this one for the clean air healthy future. Vietnam have a Cần city participate in this project with three other city in the Southeast Asia to participate on this one for the healthy for the clean air city. Studies some picture about the activity for improving the quality of the living quality in Vietnam. You can see that is some activity about the very new for the Hanoi city, for the emission test of motorcycle circulating in Hanoi city is the last year 2021. But you also to read on the newspaper that it's not a lot of people to participate on this project. And to go to, instead of using the motorcycle or the car, the private car, to go by bicycle is also one of the one activities that many people participate about this one, and it's me. Yeah. The other one we have also to have some regulation about the reducing plastic waste. Yes, we have this one to managing and reducing the plastic waste. You can see we list here many activity to show that to reuse, reduce, and recycle of the material, and to the objective is not zero waste, but to reduce and reuse of and recycle some material, some material waste. We would like to talk about the new idea. Nowadays, many people talk about the circular economy, towards sustainable development. And I think the circular economy not very it's very familiar with Vietnam, because in the past, in the many years past ago, we have to some activity like VAC, người Việt Nam gọi là vườn ao chuồng đấy. VAC about this one for that is the very simple example for the circular economy. That means that this waste of this products is become as the input, the output of these the products become the input of the new products. That is to come to the linear and circular economy model. Yeah, you can see that. And Vietnam government have some regulation about the resolution, the regulation and the setting the task of promoting circular economy and sustainable development. The decision, the other one is the decision from the Prime Minister issued by the government to approving the national strategy on green growth of the period of 2021 and 2030 with a vision to 2015 for reducing the intensity of greenhouse gas emission. Some activity you can see. And our healthy city of tomorrow, you can see. When the people is have a well-being with mental, the social, and the physical. Like the definition of the WHO. So we can conclude that in Vietnam we have many legal documents have been issued to develop the economy while still protecting human health and the surrounding environment. However, the implementation has not been synchronized. So we need a multidisciplinary approach, including urban planning, economic development, social science development, public health development. And last week, I would like to show the work of Mr. Trần Ngọc Chính about the urban development. Is not only directly to the next generation, but also associated with the sustainable development of the natural environment, considering climate change factor. If these factors are not ensured, a modern city cannot be sustainable. That's all. And so we can focus about this one. Thank you for attention.
Thank you, Dr. Lai Thế Thái Hà, for a very comprehensive presentation, providing a series of concepts on healthy cities and UNDP SDGs concerning how to ensure community health and healthy living environment. She also provide knowledge on many regulation issues in Vietnam to balance between both human health and economic growth. She emphasized the inconsistency between the two goals in the actual implementation. For that reason, we need to have a human-centered approach in urban planning and development. May I add that Dr. Lê Thái Hà is among those who contribute to the research on developing standards on drinking waters for developing countries sponsored by WHO. She's also played a central role in developing national laboratories to monitor the quality of drinking water in Vietnam. Now may I invite you to listen to the third presentation by Dr. Chu Kim Đức and Dr. Triệu Quốc Đạt from Think Playgrounds to talk about how to renovate public spaces based on the communities. Good afternoon, I'm Kim Đức and this is Quốc Đạt. We're co-founders of Think Playgrounds. First, we wish to thank Kaz and Huse and the organizing committee for inviting us here to introduce to you about what we have done. Let us talk about the practices of Think Playgrounds, our organization. We begin with an idea that urban children, they lack the space to play. When we started this project 2014, my child had no public playground, we could only go to supermarkets or paid theme parks. So without good public spaces for children to mingle out and to meet each other for free, it would be impossible to create a healthy environment for children. And so we work with volunteers, architects and designers to create a public playground for children from recycled materials. And then many parents join us. And then we established a social enterprise, the Think Playgrounds. We have created a total of 200 playgrounds of this kind across the country. May I add that in 2016 we established this enterprise. So now we develop a series of playground options that we can sell these options to private enterprises, and the money raised from selling these options and designs will be reinvested into our social enterprise. We work with Hussein in some projects to build public playground for children in mountainous region. First, a public playground would be more sustainable if it is situated within a community and meet the demand of local people. About our approach, when Think Playground was first established, there was many studies on urban issues and urban designs, but there was missing an evidence on the feasibility of renovating urban context. And then what we do is we want to practice to bring the knowledge into practice, and our approach is very much from the bottom up, community based. So we are not the expert. The community would be the experts. When we approach the community, we listen to their voice, we place them into the position of the expert who know the space, the connection involved in the place, the specific conflicts in that community, and on the connection that involves with that particular place. And then we provide them with a solution to connect them together, and we inspire them to find a solution for themselves. We encourage the communities to share ideas and experiences and allow them to participate in the planning from Plan Zero, from the inception phase, so that they can think, design, and build and solicit the materials. And we have the zero carbon emission targets in mind, and we try to incorporate the most vulnerable groups as well. And when we started this project, Think Playground was connected to many experts and organizations from different fields, and we learn a lot from them, from organizations working in the field of urban planning and children playground and environmental education. And Think Ground has the opportunity to work with many experts to create different playground concepts. So, for example, some playgrounds are mobile, or some is called the public, meaning a very small park but within an urban space. And then we will introduce some few more. This is an example. We utilize, or the case study we know, to utilize wasted spaces, for example, within old residential quarter. So normally there is a wasted area, but in between the residential area, and many of those lands are often turned into dumping ground, but then we try to convert them into playground. And even in new industrial zone or in residential area, there's some open spaces that are left unused or in a way very unfriendly to people. And then we discuss with community or with the investor or the builder so that they can transform those spaces in a way more friendly to user. And we noticed that urban communities, they're so diverse, even there in Hanoi. So in Hanoi, we found groups of very different situations. So, for example, in a khu tập thể, in an old-style residential area, and then those people, they've been living together for many years, and so it's quite easy for them to talk to each other and join hands to sustain the public spaces we create together. However, or in Đông Anh, and then it is undergoing the process of rapid urbanization, and people very much interested in preserving public spaces for everyone. And if we can build on the support from these communities, and then the public spaces that we create would be very sustainable. And one of the central point when we approach the community, when we work with hundreds of communities, we learn some lesson, and one principle is that each community has their own features and problems, and some people are very talkative, some are quite quiet, and some contribute ideas which do not always make sense, and we have to work with them to refine these ideas in order to gather the perspectives of people from different age groups and genders. And when we work with community, we try to share, to become sympathetic with their values, for example, solidarity between neighbors, and then we only begin the work after we learn about those values. And throughout the project, we try to preserve these important values and get them involved to deal with any problem emerging in any public spaces. This is a model we wish to share with you. In cities, when we begin building playgrounds, and then we realize that it's important, when we create playgrounds, we must create a space for creative citizens in the future. When we talk about creative citizens, there's a concept of adventurous playgrounds or adventurous parks. So we create a space that are very much natural-like, where the children are provided with tools, and then they work with our play workers and adults. We let the urban children to make an adventure into a natural-like habitat in order for them to solve the problem themselves. And by so doing, we will be able to solve problems that we're now seeing in South Korea or in Japan, where many children, they feel isolated or they're unable to deal with daily problems and they commit suicide. We want to allow children solutions to deal with those problems. Another model, which is the community-based gardens. So 6 have been established in Hanoi, and we just established another model in the Cheongseong Wood. This is a very fascinating model because it creates an opportunity to reduce the amount of concrete. So whenever we think about a playground, everyone just wants to use concrete and concrete and concrete. But if we can create a garden, it will create a community space for everyone. And then we talk with local people about organic gardens. And then we create a very eco-friendly environment where we can gather people together and at the same time ensure and preserve the biodiversity. Another model, which is community art. We want to bring community art into public spaces. And this is a method through which we want to instill self-pride into the local community. This is an artist. We invite him to participate in our project in Dong Anh district, and he chose a very famous Vietnamese fairy tales, and then he make all the decorations in an empty space. That empty space has no name until we launched the project there. And then we launched an artistic project of modern assemblage arts. And then in 3 hectares area, we create an art space and become a trademark for that particular community. And that's an example through which we bring arts and artists into empty spaces and turning the spaces into a giant exhibition for the place, and in which local people become the curators themselves. And when we do community art projects of this kind, we realize that it's quite easy to get children involved, to inspire them to be creative and to enjoy artistic spaces. It may be more difficult to persuade adults. Some adults, they have questions about why we make a playground full of arts for children. So it's interesting that when we create a space for people, and then children may be a crucial factor to provide innovation to public spaces. So during our work, we realize a couple of factors. First, it's important that we work with people from different backgrounds. For example, experts from environment arts and on building materials. And second, we realize that the creation of the public spaces does not end with the completion of the building, of the construction. It has to do also with the prolonged sustainment and the activities going on in that place. And another method to create a creative city or an artistic city or anything concerning sustainable urban development, then the people, the community, are the crucial factors, and we need to create a physical environment for people to connect with each other, to heal the divisions or to heal the disruption that have been created by rapid urbanization. So the models that we develop, for example, adventurous parks or children playground or community arts, these are examples that can be easily replicated in anywhere, and it can be easily scaled up. Of course, it's not always easy to scale up because we cannot copy one model from one place and bring it into another space or impose it on another place, because we cannot do the same thing everywhere. Because in one place we can do a forest-like imitation. In another, we need to create an art space. So we need to fully understand the local community before we can have a successful project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, the two architect, Chị Kim Đức and Nguyễn Quốc Đạt. So after two presentations, We have the first presentation providing us with a lot of knowledge and information, and then the third presentation with practical experiences with the private business participation in different models like playground, community art. We can see that you have created very interesting experiences when you work directly with the community by developing a community playground, and community arts and other community services to contribute to improving the quality of urban life and improving the living environment for people. And create direct impact on humans' health, including physical and mental and social health for the people. And I thank the two architects very much. And I would like to provide you with a little additional information that Ms. Kim Duk was trained in and was voted as the outstanding face in 2021, she was, and her project was featured on national television on the model of developing a community garden by the Red River, which was very impressive. And coming up next, I would like you to take a 10-minute break before we coming back here for the plenary session and open discussion. Now it's 3:35, so let's come back here at 3:45. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated so that we can continue the next session. I would like to introduce additional guest to today's webinar. We have Associate Professor Hoàng Minh Chí, President of the National Committee, and Dr. Nguyễn Thu Hải, Trần Thu Ánh, and Madame Tô Thị Lợi, member of the Association of the Construction of Vietnam. So in nearly 2 hours, we have listened to 3 presentations of the 3 international and Vietnamese speakers, and now we moving on to the second session, the panel discussion. I would like to introduce the moderator, Dr. Lê Thu Thủy, the consultant of the Hope Project from University of Hamburg. Dr. Thủy has had many years of experience in policy and urban management to cope with global and in domestic challenges. The members of the panel today include Dr. Phan Đăng Nhi from Mr. Phan Vĩnh Long from the infrastructure, technical infrastructure of MOC, and PhD Lê Thái Hà, and architect Lê Trung Đức. And in this room today, I would like to invite Mr. Lê Khánh Long, Lê Thái Hà, and architect Trung Đức to go to the stage so that we can begin our panel discussion for today. I would like to invite Dr. Hà, Mr. Long, Mr. Đức. And now I would like to give the floor to Madame Thu Thủy as a moderator. Dear all distinguished participants, speakers, and all the participants at this webinar, I would like to begin the panel discussion.
So good morning and good afternoon, honored guests, participants, and especially our panelists. Welcome all to the panel discussion, where we will further discuss the question of our webinar today, how to effectively engage building users to create a healthy and sustainable living environment in Vietnamese cities, challenges, opportunities, and recommendations. Our panel discussion will last 30 minutes, and we will welcome the continued participation of our three keynote speakers, Professor Lawrence, Dr. Thái Hà, and co-founders of Think Playground. Especially, we would like to also welcome the participation of two other known experts in the field, Dr. Stephanie Getman, she's an expert of healthy living environment, who is now based in Utrecht, and Mr. Nguyễn Khánh Long, the representative from Ministry of Construction. He's a chief of the Solid Waste Management Agency of Technical Infrastructure. So Dr. Getman, let us please start with a brief introduction about yourself and your insights on the topic of the webinar today, how to effectively engage building users to create healthy living environment in the context of Vietnam. The floor is yours, Dr. Stephanie Getman.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, thank you very much for organizing this event, and thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very happy to talk about healthy cities, especially in Vietnam. In my work, I actually focus mostly on behavioral change and policy recommendations to promote active lifestyles and active mobility in cities. You already just mentioned, I think maybe that I worked in Vietnam for almost 14 years, or a long time. I left 2016, late 2016. I worked with the Canadian NGO Healthbridge that most of you will know probably, and UN Habitat. Worked as livable cities expert. And I also worked with many of you at the National University of Civil Engineering. So I'm very happy to see you all again today. First, I actually also want to share what are sustainable and healthy cities for me. I think that these are cities that are in balance with the resources of the earth. And very importantly, and that has been my main focus for a long time, is to promote health equity, which means cities that are accessible for everyone, from all ages, from young to old, from rich to poor, and also that there's interaction between these groups in creating healthy cities. It's also part of creating healthy cities. As you just mentioned, I'm actually working and living in the city of Utrecht, where we have 350,000 inhabitants. I'm saying that because actually we have 150,000 of them, the citizens, they commute every day on the bicycle to work and school. And that didn't just happen because we all happen to like bicycle riding, we do, but there was very active policy behind that. I think you might know that the Netherlands is a very known country for cycling. And that is because since the 1970s, our government actively has been working on that with policies. And Utrecht has a cycling policy, and it has a slogan. It says, Utrecht, we all cycle. And related to the question how to involve citizens in this change, I think it's very important to have very strong vision of what you want, what change you want to make, and also to have very strong leaders that have this, that communicate, of course, this vision. So in Utrecht, luckily, we have a strong leader in the municipality that is focusing on that vision. Let me see, I can say a lot of other things, but I don't want to take too much time from the other speakers. So maybe I leave it to this and I contribute later if we have more discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stephanie. It's very interesting and also very important that you mentioned about the concept of health equity, and hopefully that we can maybe discuss about this topic later today or even in the coming events of HOPE project. It's also very important that you mentioned about the case study of Utrecht with the cycling programs, and which is also very important in terms of urban mobility to promote health. Next, I would like to introduce Mr. Nguyễn Khánh Long, the representative from the Ministry of Construction. Mr. Long, could you please also briefly introduce about yourself and also some brief ideas and comments on the topic, especially from the perspectives of national policies in how to integrate health and users' behaviors into the built environment. Mr. Long, please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm pleased to be invited by HUSE and KS to this workshop. The topic of today's workshop demonstrates the growing interest in the improvement of living environment in urban context. And this is definitely the goal, the key concern of the party and the state of Vietnam at the beginning of 2022. The Politburo issued a resolution number 6 on Vietnam development and urbanization by 2045. The solution detailed the goals on urban development in Vietnam. And the principle is, the guiding principle is to improve the living environment in major cities with a series of solutions and goals. This is very much connected to the topic of today's webinar, and the topic we're discussing here will contribute to deal and to solve with a series of problems mentioned in that resolution. And then it's so important that we have more policies to have urban residents to have better access to public spaces, to have access to better infrastructure, to education, to healthcare, and in order to achieve the aims set out by the party and the state.
Cảm ơn anh Long ạ. Thank you very much for your introduction, and we hope to also dig into more details in terms of the implementation of those policies in reality later on in the discussion. So moving on to the discussion, we would like to revisit the concept that has been very highly emphasized in the keynote speech of Professor Lawrence, the transdisciplinary approach in how to connect the concept of health and urban environment and also sustainable development into the context of urban governance. So we would like to ask our panelists also your further insights on how to promote such approach in Vietnam in the context of developing countries like Vietnam, and the challenges, the opportunities, and also the change needed to bring this into more effective implementation. So could we please maybe start with Professor Lawrence, your insights on how this idea can be further or more effectively implemented in the context of Vietnam.
Thank you for the floor. I don't know Vietnam, so I'm really feel unqualified to answer your question, because as it was said in a couple of presentations after mine, you must work with the local context. And I think that is fundamental. And when we're talking about the local context, we're talking about the political context, the economic context, and of course, the local population. And so that needs to be understood. But what is very interesting, if we go back to the third keynote presentation and the way working with a children's playground has created community adhesion to developing a sense of social bonding, a social community, and of health and quality of life, I think we can see the seeds of change. And I've explained in my book that the city is the most appropriate place to implement sustainable development. It's not the national level. Of course, you need the support at the national level, and that is by funding, political endorsement. But if you take the example of the United States of America, for example, where we've had national governments that have not been strongly committed to climate change or sustainability, you can nonetheless see that there are many cities in the US that are leading the world in terms of active living, energy production at the local level, and so forth. So my simple recommendation for Vietnam is understand the context and work with it in much the way that we saw with the case of the playgrounds and the community gardens. But we need, as it was rightly said by Stephanie, a strong vision and leadership. And that vision shouldn't be top down. It has to involve the community. It has to be, as I said, a societal goal and project, not a scientific one, or not just a political one. And so for that, it's very, very important to spend the time to create a vision of where we want to be, say in 2030, in 2050, in 2070, and then how do we get there? And of course, there's scenarios and backcasting that can be used very creatively to make that change, always integrating health and quality of life, because as we heard this morning, it should be a people-centered approach.
Thank you so much, Professor Lawrence. I think your feedback to the question is really reflecting the transdisciplinary approach that you advocated, that we should always understand the local context and develop a multi-stakeholder development where we listen and we understand the communities. And referring to the such experience in Vietnam, we would like to ask the team from Think Playground. We understand that you see the local communities as experts, and also to listen to the children, to give them the right to develop, to design their development path, design their own playground or public space. In your work, you have gained a lot of success, but what are the challenges that you have encountered? You presented something in the presentation, but we understand that there are many also other different aspects beside the diversified opinions, or the different in terms of age groups or gender or something like that, but rather more political, more complex challenges in terms of economic benefits or interests or something like that, because you deal with a lot with, for example, unused land, which is also a very critical asset in the urban context. So can you please share a little bit more about the challenges that you face and how did you overcome those things to get the goal that you want in your social projects?
when we work on the participation of experts in community projects, we realize that there are barriers, including first is the ability to dialogue. What I mean here is that the experts use the experts' language, terminologies, which make it very difficult for the community to comprehend. That's why I come up with an approach so that the experts use the very close to life language and stay very patient, because the dialogue with the community will be long, take long time, and sometimes it can create misunderstanding. So it's not as simple as we see. So in this process, we have the participation of experts, and the purpose is to reach a common voice with the community and to create more dialogues with the community. So we use a simple and easy language. The second is the projects on public spaces implemented by local governments usually lacks of community participation in the process of consultation, or the process of developing the project, or the process of maintaining project after it was phased out. For example, the process of collecting public opinions, where the objections, oppositions should be heard. There is still lack of cohesion between the project and the community, and it doesn't create the feeling that the community has a voice in this project, and therefore these projects is considered as some products, some services provided by the government, and therefore when the park has problems, then it is a job of the people who is in charge of managing the parks, and it doesn't create the feeling of ownership for the community and for their participation in the follow-up period in maintaining these parks. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Đức, for your inputs regarding the government's efforts to increase the community participation in the process of consultation for public projects. But it is also about how to organize it and how to create a common voice for the community, and how to encourage the community's participation, how to collect inputs from the community. And I would like to have a question for Ms. Stephanie.
Stephanie, would we please ask you also about the experience that you shared earlier, that you have been working in Vietnam for a while and have been also involved in many different projects in promoting health in cities. Could you also please share more insights in those kind of challenges that you faced, or also the opportunities that were there to as a kind of change seeds for change, like Professor Lawrence mentioned. And also some of your recommendations to be able to promote this community-based public space development in a more effective way.
Yes, thank you. In my experience, I didn't understand everything that was said just before, just a bit, but in my experience, there's actually a lot of potential for community development in Vietnam, because the communities are very strong. And I worked before, but that's years ago, also in Hanoi, and we worked with communities and they're very engaged. So I think there's actually a lot of potential in Vietnam to work with the community. At the same time, of course, you have quite a top-down, might say, governmental system, but it still works together. So you have the communities that have space to develop some visions for the community. And I think that's really a power to use. And also to see, because through the years, many things has changed. I know also in the government of communities in Vietnam and neighborhoods, but I think it's really good to tap into that. So I think what Think Playground is doing is really good and very inspiring. Another thing, something that's really important, and I see that in Vietnam, but everywhere also in the Netherlands, is that it's not only the policies and the strong visions, of course, of leaders, but you need to have behavioral change of citizens, of everyone. So this whole transition to sustainable and more healthy cities is a system change in society, and it requires changes in the social norms that we have from everyone, from leaders, from citizens, from everyone, from the industry. And that is an important question that I've been working on more and more, also in Vietnam, but also a lot in the Netherlands. And that's like, how do you change that? And what I see is that what is really important is providing information. So what Think Playground is doing, providing workshops, doing workshops in communities is a really good way to provide information, but actually also having a strong vision in a way is also providing information, ideas, and take care of the social norms, what people around you think, and try to work with that. And also research, of course, we all know that research is super important. Because we call this the intention behavior gap, but that means that there might be intentions for people to change. Most people want to live a healthy lifestyle. Most people want to live sustainable lifestyles, but how to do that is another thing, how to do it. And that also has to do with people might not have the capacity, and just normal citizens, but again, also industry or even government leaders. So it's important to build up that capacity for everyone, for people in the community, for children going to schools, for parents, just for everyone in society. So for example, if you want a cycling city, you need to know how to cycle. You have to provide training how to cycle, but you also have to provide the cycling infrastructure. So there are a lot of different aspects to that. So for me, when I'm thinking about engaging the community, it's about, again, having a vision, but also empowering them, of course, by providing them with information, giving them tools, giving trainings. And also if we see that in many successful, let's say successful cities that are becoming more healthy, more sustainable, more cycling, more active transportation, they also often do programs which are, for example, what I just heard from Think Playground was adventure playground, or you also have play streets, school streets, or many other, or walking streets. But you can, I know that Hanoi actually already has that. You have, I think every weekend you have walking in the center, or you used to have that. I think you still have that. But these are really good programs. So introduce programs in neighborhoods and involve citizens to participate in these programs. And then lastly, what is also very important is funding, because these programs need money. So you need to find funding that is also sustainable. Of course, it's really hard. Sometimes, like now, you have a project and you have funding for a short time, but you have to make sure that the project doesn't stop after that, right? So that's for community engagement, you need some funding. So I'm saying now a lot of things, what Professor Lawrence already said. This change is like a wicked challenge, it's a complex problem, and there's so many aspects of that, and you have to take into account all these aspects. But to come back to behavioral change, I think changing the social norm, empowering communities, I think that's possible here in the Netherlands, but it's really possible too in Hanoi, and it's already happening in Hanoi. You just need to know where and give them even more tools to do it, so you can do it more. In every neighborhood, let's say in Vietnamese cities. I hope this contributes a little bit.
Excuse me?
I hope this gives enough input.
Yes, definitely. It was so insightful, and many keywords that I have been able to type down, because it's so important, all the different aspects of how to change
the citizens' behavior, the communication strategy that you mentioned, the engagement with their communities with vision, and giving them the tools and training them, and the facilities. And also very important aspect is the funding aspect, the sustainability of those pilot or demonstration initiatives. So thank you very much for the insights. And yes, we would like to move on with this discussion from the perspective of policy makers and officials of government agencies. So could we please ask Mr. Long from the Ministry of Construction on your experience and also your work related to bringing the to promoting human behaviors in for example, saving energy, or increasing energy efficiencies in the building sector, or the users' behavior in, for example, solid waste management in the Vietnamese cities. So those aspects of healthy and sustainable living lifestyle in Vietnamese cities. Could you please also share some of your experience in this regard?
Regarding the question, because from the areas in which I work, it's quite confined. So, for example, in terms of solid waste management, and so we do have some say concerning the sewage and drainage system and urban lighting. So I'm not sure how to respond to your question about behavioral change. So, for example, the sorting waste at the source. So since 2003 in Hanoi, we launched a pilot project in several precincts, but then we were unable to upscale that project because, for example, changing the behavior of the people is just one thing, but then we do not have sustained commitment from the government and local authorities to continue this project. For example, the government did not provide enough tool and budget for the sorting of waste at its source. But then elsewhere, we have seen quite successful sorting of waste at the source with better technology in place. So when technologies are available and when people can actually see the concrete results of the sorting, then they will do it. In the previous example in Hanoi, many people see that when they try to sort the waste at the source, but then the waste after collected will be dumped together and then it would be pointless. Another example has to do with public infrastructure, public transport infrastructure. For example, in Hanoi, we now have the Sky Train. And now it's so important that we provide people with the vehicle to help them travel from one station to another. So, for example, in Hanoi, we have a plan to install publicly rented bicycle at every SkyTrain station in order to facilitate the use of environmentally friendly vehicles. But then in order to change the behaviors of the people, and a factor to consider would be the commitment of the government. So, for example, whether the SkyTrain or the rapid transfer bus, we need the government to commit sustained efforts in order to facilitate behavioral change. Another example concerning the renovation of public spaces, for example, parks and public gardens. So I presume that local governments often encourage private businesses to participate in the renovation of public spaces. But the policies, the state policy, do not always provide favorable conditions for such activities to thrive. So, for example, if they do a small playground, you don't have any problem. But if you want to do a big project in Hanoi, and then you may encounter a series of policy obstacles. There may not be funding from public sources. You may encounter some legal challenges concerning the regulation and permission and so forth. And concerning all the regulation on planning public spaces and parks, it is mandatory that every residential area must have public space for everyone. But it's just on paper. But then in practice, a playground is not always constructed, although it's already legally required. And sometimes the investor, although originally on the plan, on the blueprint, there is a playground, there's a park, but later on the investor decided to change the function of that particular area to another. So just some quick sharings based on my own experience. Thank you very much for your sharings, and the points you mentioned relates a lot to the issues of urban governance and urban planning, and certainly we will have the opportunity to talk more about this in the forthcoming events of the Hope Project. In this room, I think we have Mr. Ngô Trung Hải, architect and Secretary General of Association of Vietnamese City, ACVN. And I think in the future we may get Vietnamese cities and city government involved, and certainly they play a very important role in the implementation of public policy in urban development and so forth. I noticed that Professor Lawrence, he raises his hands. So please go ahead.
Professor Lawrence, could you please share your points? Would you like to take the floor, please?
Yes, I want to come back to some of the points that have just been raised. And Stephanie began with this question about behavioral change, which is fundamental and is important. But I think we have to remember that we're in a fractured society, at least in Europe. I don't know, again, the situation in Vietnam, whether there is a common culture or it's a society with very different values. But if we look at Europe or even North or South America, we find that one of the big problems with talking about asking people, including politicians, to change their behavior is that we're not confronting fundamental values. And we live in a society where we've got, on the one hand, the egocentric, individualistic, liberal, egocentric values, and these people don't want to change, even if they're going to leave a world that is not as well off for their grandchildren. They're not interested in that agenda of sustainability. They're not interested in the inequity and the differences that we've talked about this morning. And that's a basic fundamental problem. And it's certainly a barrier. And one of the articles that I've put at the end of my presentation discusses this whole question of why hasn't the SDGs focused more strongly on addressing fundamental values? Because we need to shift from those egocentric, individualistic values to altruistic, shared, collective values about a better future. And until we do that, we're not going to have to change. We're not going to have the political commitment that we just heard from Mr. Long, that nobody's following up to see whether the playground's actually built or not. Nobody's sanctioned. And that's one of the whole problems with the sustainability agenda, in fact. There are no sanctions. And it's a fundamental weakness of the UN system. And so that's why I think I've tried to explain in my work that the way forward is this community-based, and you bring on board and you build, like we saw with the playgrounds, but we've seen it also with housing. We've got very interesting housing cooperative movements in Western Europe. We've got very interesting community gardens in all countries around the world, basically, that are trying to go beyond the industrial food system. So we have to work with those that are committed, I think, and show the way forward. And I think one of the interesting things is that we can talk about best practice, and that's been talked about a lot in urban planning, but we always have to come back to this fundamental point that we've talked about this morning. You can't take something that worked in Switzerland and apply it in Vietnam. That was the colonial era of urban planning in the 20th century that we know failed. It failed in Africa as well. So we need this far more locally based initiative working with the community in order to try and overcome this enormous obstacle that we have, which basically is denying the importance of fundamental values.
Thank you very much, Professor Lawrence. Yeah, I think we all agree and understand that community-based approach is such an important way to forward, and where we rely on the local knowledge, and they are the one who understands best their situation and knows best what they want for their children in their future. So this is definitely the way that we should promote more in combination with other multi-level governance approach. So with the sharing of Professor Lawrence, I would like to close the panel discussion here to give the floor back to Dr. Hoa for the moderation of the open discussion.
Thank you, Madam Thuy. So we have had 45 minutes for the panel discussion on the very essential and interesting issues, which are also very complex. I have received the questions from the assisting committee, and I would like to read all these questions. And I would like the participants, when you ask question, please introduce yourself, your name, your organization, and your area of interest. First of all, I would like to invite Associate Professor Lưu Đức Hải from the Association of Economic Environment of Vietnam. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor to be here. To attend this webinar, and I see that the content of the webinars is very interesting. Especially, I'm very impressed with the presentation by Professor Lawrence. I believe that the current issue facing Vietnamese cities is environmental pollution, water drainage, waste, as mentioned by Dr. Ha. Then the question is, what are the causes? I think that it is because of the structure including housing upgrade, housing development by individual organizations. And I don't know this process, when will it stop? So the question raised here is that it should be, is this the right thing to do, because the structure of the urban space is require the demolition and repairment of the housing project. So the question here is, a green or sustainable or healthy urban, what should be the spatial structure for such a city? For example, what is the definition of sustainable space? What is the definition of green space? And I mean, space here is three-dimensional space. And what is the space for transport? And what are the vacant spaces in the city? This is very important. And I think that the project, if Project Hope can share the experiences with Vietnam relating to all these questions, so that Vietnam can insert all this knowledge into the new policy. For example, very recently, Hanoi City destroy all the low building around the Ba Dinh Stadium, and then Ba Dinh Square, and then there is opposition, and the project was put on hold. Or another example of Hoa Lạc new urban area, the space for transport and for public spaces is only 20%. So imagine that in the future, will the generation of my children, my grandchildren, will they have enough space for development with that 20%? So it is very important question is how to define a healthy spatial space in the cities for different kind of cities, like the capital city or the tourist city or a regular city. So the question for Vietnam is to produce and introduce technical regulations on all these aspects. So I think that is the core issue for Vietnam. Other issues like waste treatment or energy issues, every project will take that into account. So the core question here is the spatial structure for the cities. Thank you, Associate Professor Lê Đức Hải, because the spatial structure is a very difficult question, but it's also an important question for the city planner and the urban managers. And now I would like to invite Mr. Ngô Trung Hải, who is now the Secretary General of the General Secretary of the Vietnam Urban Association. We have many technical regulations for example, technical regulations for 2021 planning, city planning. So from your position, what are your inputs in how to combine the structure, the spatial structure in the planning? First of all, greeting to Mr. Florian, resident representative of CAS Vietnam, Mr. Minh, and to Madam Thuy and Dr. Gable, my long-term friends. So it is always a burden to all of us and the architects in how to engage people in creating well-being for themselves. And that is the core question here. And Professor Ming has completed a guideline on the working space for the community. So this is a project that I have participated previously. And this publication has been completed and sent to at least 50 cities. It's and for your information, Mr. Florian and Ms. Phương, that this publication is warmly welcomed by the cities, and the cities have been using this as a foundation, because when we talk about working space without community participation, then it's never a working space, because who will work in that space, who will sell products in this space, and if they don't participate in this working space, then there will be no activities. And Hanoi City has been doing a great job in creating working space with the participation of residents, and many other cities are following suit to creating working space because that provide the venue for the nighttime economy, to improve the residents' living conditions, and also to attract tourists and to identify the economic activities. And that is a very small niche that CAS has created, but it provides us a new approach of applying the method in how to create this working space, because with no interest of the community, then the working space will be the place where no people work. And the working space should be the bundle of different cultural activities. And to answer the question that Mr. Lưu Đức Hải and Ms. Hoa has raised, what is the nature of our city planning? We have all the technical regulations and standards for the spatial structure in the cities. But the question here is that who are the target for the city planners, or for the project, or for the planning? And it's also a question whether the local government really apply these technical regulations, or only looking at the flow of the people, or the current flow of people. So we can see here is the example of the playground. It's very interesting. However, that is only a speck of sand. And we have to look at that on a broader scale, because it is very important to ensure that the public spaces will have the budget for long-term maintenance, and also the long-term commitment of the local people. And it needs to specify the responsibility of different stakeholders in the later part of the project. Like Ms. Stephanie has a long time working on public spaces and has many ideas for the public spaces. But in some cases, we can see that it doesn't work in reality, because if the local government, city planners have the burden, economic burden, then in these cases it doesn't work. So the story here is about the awareness of the leadership. We have seen a lot of changes. All the leaders look at the public spaces as a gold mine. It's not just a regular vacant land. So all the leaders have been aware that this is a gold mine and how to exploit this gold mine for the greater society's benefit. Because if we are not careful, it will serve the need of only one small group in the society. So I think in the 21st century, it is a great vision, and many cities of Vietnam really wish to participate in this Project Hope and would like to create a healthy city, the city for the entire city population. It's not only just a green space, but it's also about the prosperity. It's also about creating enough income for the city citizens to improve from 3,000 a year to 30,000 or 60,000. So it is about the budget to maintain these spaces and these activities in different public spaces in the budget planning. As a member of the Urban Association of Vietnam, I hope that we will be ready and willing to participate to make recommendations and to ensure that your recommendation will be put into the reality. So very soon we will have the event where we will discuss the issues and we will follow up to maintain the publication of working space and citizens' participation, and we will also update that. And during this Congress, the coming Congress, we will be able to display some ideas relating to the working space, and we can also display even the initial ideas towards developing and creating healthy cities.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Ngô Trung Hải. Now, may I invite Professor Vũ Thị Vinh, who has been involved in CAS project for the long time, formerly Secretary General of ACVN, who has contributed a lot to the development of a healthy urban living environment, urban development based on communities and infrastructure development. Please share with us some experiences and recommendations for the HOPE project as well. Dear Mr. Representative of the CAS, Mrs. Phương, Mr. Zhang from HUSE, and from distinguished guests, I'm grateful to CAS and HUSE for the invitation to the launching event of this project. And I fully believe this is a very innovative idea with great topic. And then we listen to wonderful presentation from the speakers with lots of fascinating initiatives for Vietnamese cities. I want to pick up from the point made by Mr. Ngô Trung Hải. I think ACVN and CAS has been working together since 2003. And we have just recently wrapped up a 3-year partnership, and we have published a book on community-based pedestrian space in Vietnamese cities. And the book is the fruit of many initiatives that has been done in Vietnamese cities over the years. And CAS has helped us to organize a series of workshops which inspire local authorities from different cities in Vietnam, from Hội An, Hanoi, in the district of Hoàn Kiếm in Hanoi. And so such examples are inspiring other cities to develop their own pedestrian space. And since, and to speak more widely, CAS has supported our association in many other aspects since 2003 that I'm unable to speak in greater details, but I'm confident that this is another of such great initiatives. With this launching event, I'm fully confident that this project, which is very much sponsored or based at a very strong think tank in Vietnam, who say, and with the support from CAS, I'm confident that this project will be very, very successful and fruitful. And today, Mr. Ngô Trung Hải expresses the willingness to cooperate with CAS and who say to promote this project. As you know, we have a connection to 120 cities in Vietnam, accounting for 70% of the urban population in Vietnam, and this will provide a fruitful ground for future activities of this project, and I have a strong confidence on the success of this project. Thank you very much, Professor Vinh. We are grateful to your kind words and the confidence you have shown on the future of this project. I have received quite large numbers of questions from online participants. There's a question, the question in English. I will translate roughly that the question is that I haven't seen any discussion on lighting and artificial lighting in urban environment, how artificial lighting affects the community's health. May I direct this question to Mr. Long, or if I'm wondering if anyone to jump in and say a few words about the impact of artificial lighting on urban's health. The question is a bit technical, I presume, at this stage. About this question, so of course there are regulations and policy concerning urban lighting, but there are many other actors involved in this, and so lighting may have an impact on daily life, and certainly this is something of great concerns for Vietnamese authorities. For example, the equipment or the mode of lighting, particularly the lighting of public spaces, whether to create the kind of landmarks or whether simply to support daily needs, and how to ensure equal access to urban lighting. How to ensure access to urban lighting, because we need to ensure that we need to provide lighting in an equitable manner to everyone, to make sure that everyone from rural to urban can have access to decent lighting condition for their everyday needs. At the moment, our ministry is developing a new policy for urban lighting between 2021 and 2030. Just some very quick thoughts. Thank you, Mr. Long.
And now I would like to invite Dr. Professor Nguyễn Hoàng Chí to have his sharing. Thank you. Thank you, the organizing board, the Ministry of Construction, the University of Civil Engineering, and all the international speakers. We are the committee on biosphere belonging to UNESCO, based in Vietnam. The philosophy is on development and preservation for development. So I think the philosophy is very simple, and I believe that everyone will remember this when they step out of this room. Coming back to this topic of this project, I think this is a very interesting project and also very essential for all of us. So my question, I have one question for Professor Lawrence. I will speak in Vietnamese first and in English later. The so-called interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary are the two concepts. One is broader than the other one. So in English, in Vietnamese, I don't think the Vietnamese translation reflects it fully, the connotation of this concept. Coming back to my job, how it is related to this project. I think that all the areas from construction to economics, culture, come to the is about policy, politics, to create theory and actions that we have to implement. There are certain aspects that's included in the planning. When it comes to reality, it's not as described under the planning. The reality, sometimes we can only do half of what we expected to do under the planning. So the project to address all the issues like water submerge or pollution, I don't think the project like that can address all the practical issues, but it can only address the issue to some extent. So this project entitled, the abbreviation of this project is hope. It's about hope. So what do we hope in this project? What are the hope of this project? And the project, 3-year project, what are the impacts of this project? What we can do better after this project? So I have translated this theory in the Biosphere project. The head of one group is the one visiting group is chairman of Dong Nai People's Committee. He said that it's a really interesting project, but when he went back to his province, they couldn't do anything. So that's why I said that there are certain areas that relating to the biosphere that we see that as very important, but it's so difficult for us to translate into reality. And it all go back to policy, because the reality is whatever we want to do doesn't mean that we can do that. And another lesson is that all the activities from construction to urban development, it should be in harmony with the nature. When we implement these activities, we have to ensure the harmony with the nature instead of destroying the nature. And I would like to go back with the professor for Lauren. My question, I would like to speak in English. Vâng, câu hỏi quay trở lại với giáo sư Lawrence là phân biệt giữa cái gọi là xuyên ngành với liên ngành. Và mong muốn giáo sư đưa ra các cái ví dụ minh họa cụ thể. So the question to Professor Lawrence is, what is the difference between interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary? And can you please give some examples to elaborate the difference?
Thank you for this question, which is very important. And I think it's an interesting way to bring this first webinar to a close. If we think of the issue of air pollution in Hanoi today, which has been mentioned this morning, we can have doctors examining the effects of air pollution on patients. We can have chemists analyzing the content of the air to see what kind of particles are polluted. We can have engineers understanding air pollution, the causes of air pollution, and their impacts on health. Now, each of those disciplines can work independently of each other, and that is called multidisciplinary. But when they want to work together to try and improve the air pollution levels by lowering them, and therefore reduce the number of hospitalizations due to respiratory diseases, then collaboration will create interdisciplinary work between the professionals and the researchers working on this. This can be done independently of any political commitment. This can be done independently of any input from local community associations and also the private sector. I mean, if the pollution is coming from industry, one could think of the polluter pays principle and the responsibility of industry to act to reduce the air pollution at the source. So when we bring in these other actors that are neither researchers or practitioners, but people in industry, the politicians, we shift from an interdisciplinary approach to a transdisciplinary one. And better still, we bring in the local community to understand and be involved in this particular issue. So the difference between an interdisciplinary approach and a transdisciplinary one, which was shown on one of my slides as a diagram, was that you're moving from collaboration between disciplines and professions trained according to disciplinary research protocols to involve other stakeholders, including the local community, in order to tackle a specific problem. I hope that clarifies the difference between the two.
So Professor Lawrence has provided some very concrete examples to illustrate the difference between interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary. So we exceed the time by 30 minutes, so let me say another question by Dr. Michael Weber. The question is that in case investor violates current regulations and they do not build public spaces as promised, so when they change the original design. And in ways that may result in social disruption. And these are issues that we are facing, which relate to the issue of egoism that we have just discussed. And these issues, I believe, have not received adequate attention in studies concerning equity in urban planning and design. So I'm wondering, anyone want to respond to this comment? So the first question is that for investor who violates regulation, and if they do not build public spaces, what should we do? What kind of action that can be taken? So, Mr. Long, if you have any response. So I'm not sure how other countries have dealt with this question. In Vietnam, it's not unusual for investors to ignore some commitment that they made to the residents. So the laws have quite a lot of sanctions. But to what extent the authority can impose these sanctions is a matter to discuss. So we have regulations, but to what extent the authorities are willing to enforce those sanctions and regulation is then an open question. I'm not in a position to answer this in further details. It's quite technical, but I can assure you that regulations are in place, but we do not always able to enforce those regulations. The second question is about changing behaviors. An issue concerning stratified societies and how to create core values or fundamental values and how to balance between egoism and the creation of fundamental values. So this is a question about the social aspect. Anyone want to jump in? So this, I'm not talking in direct response to the question. The question is quite broad. But let me talk about a broader policy issue. Let's take the example from drinking water standards in Vietnam. Before 2009, we have two different standards for drinking water, one's for rural areas, one for the urban areas. So it's called CCSB-VN 1 and CCSB-VN 2. And you can see that people almost everywhere needs drinking water. And as Stephanie mentions, people should be eligible to the equity in terms of essential services. And in this aspect, the existence of two different standards for urban and rural is something unacceptable, and we should not have two standards for people in the countryside and people in the cities. So since 2015, we revised this, and in 2018, we revised this again, and now we only have one standard, nationwide standard for people everywhere, not just one for countryside, one for the city. So this is an example when we change the policy, and then we can change the access to equity. This is a big challenge, actually, which is when we have regulation, then to what extent we can develop the infrastructure to meet all the requirements in those regulations. So, for example, can we improve the infrastructures of water supply in the countryside to meet the higher standards, or whether we can change the habits of using waters of people in the countryside? It may be quite difficult. I also respond to the question by Professor Chi, which is that what we hope from this project. So one of the key concern is that we have a lot of definitions about healthy cities, but in Vietnam so far there has not been a comprehensive research that provide a simple, easy and to understand and comprehensive answer to what it means to be a healthy and sustainable urban environment. Thank you very much for Dr. Lê Thái Hà. Now let's move to the final section, which is the wrapping up of key points and the closing remarks. May I hand over to Dr. Nguyễn Thu Thủy, Technical Advisor of HOPE, and Vũ Thu Phương, CAS Program Manager. Thủy and Phương, the floor is yours. Thank you. Sorry, before that, may I invite our speakers, our panelists, to return to your seat. Hello. My thanks to Dr. Hoa. Allow me, on behalf of the HOPE team, to say a few words before we wrap up. With the support and the sponsorship from CAS, with the sponsorship from CAS, the HOPE project has been launched with the aim to provide policy recommendations based on research in order to develop good policies and practices in promoting sustainable cities and support the well-being of urban residents in Vietnam. The project focuses on 4 aspects: behavioral change of building users, city planning and governance, the designs of buildings and residential quarters, and building materials, the review and assessment of the lifespan of building materials. So with this event, we want to provide an overview on key concepts and categories that reflect the connection between health and buildings and living environments, and how these concepts relate to SDGs. And at today's workshop, I have prepared quite a long closing remark, but because the time is short, allow me to include that in the final report of the project for 2022. But to sum up very quickly, today we listened to fascinating speeches and presentations from the research circle from Professor Lawrence, who asked a key question, which is how we can connect what we know and what we can do. And he provides a series of key concepts And allow me to skip the details, but I want to emphasize the approach, the transdisciplinary approach, which is an approach very much dependent on community, on local knowledge, and full understanding of local context, and with an emphasis on how to put fragmented pieces together and to provide a holistic and comprehensive and systemic approach. The second presentation by Dr. Taiha provides a comprehensive view on key concepts concerning health, the project by WHO, and an overview of policies of Vietnam in dealing with urban health, for example, air pollution, and programs to promote the circular economy and green development. She also summarized the key project currently being done in Vietnamese cities to improve the well-being of urban residents, and this shows that Vietnam has engaged with these matters at the national level despite remaining barriers on reality which comes from policies, regulations, and actual implementation. The third one focuses on practicalities, on some actual practices. In Vietnam, we're pleased to see social enterprises which base their business model on community resources and initiatives. So the organization Think Playgrounds emphasize the approach of community-based, treating the community as the expert who best understand their situation and their needs, and the project, the business models of Think Playgrounds emphasize the need to get the community involved. In the discussion, we have together examines different keywords, for example, cooperation, creative citizens, and the promotions of citizens' role or the promotion of their participation, behavioral change, an issue concerning political commitment, the support from the state, and the importance of budget. We need to pay attention to investment and sustainable funding to maintain these programs and projects and to make sure that they have a decent impact. So all of these all of the key points mentioned in the presentation and the discussion will be included in our final reports and will be included in the annual report of the HOPE project. And we believe that in the forthcoming time we will receive further support and sustain support from CAS and the encouragement from Vietnamese partners. Today we're pleased to see the presence of Professor Vinh and Dr. Hai from ACVN. The two experts who have been working in the field of urban planning of Vietnam. I look forward to future cooperation with ACVN and other organizations in the implementation of Project HOPE. So before I conclude, I wish to convey my thanks to CAS for supporting our team and our initiative. I thank all the members of the project, Harvard University from Husei. Thank you for joining us to organize this event. Now I will hand over to Phương from CAS.
So I'd like to stand here to be closer to you. As the organizer and the sponsor, it is really touching for me that everyone is still here, because we plan to finish at 15 before 5. But until this late, I'm very grateful that everyone is still here, and I'm grateful for your support for this project. Today we call it kick-off day for this project, and by the end of today's discussion, I realized that all the participants here and Professor Chi asked what is the achievement of this project in 3 years. This is a kick-off day for this project. In this year, we will have 4 events like this, a webinar, and today we have the hybrid conference, and in the future we will have online webinar, and we really hope that we will continue to contribute to this project and your loyalty for this project for the next 3 years. And we hope for continued support from all of you in these 3 years for CAS. We will not be able to provide enough expertise and insights. That's why we depend very much on the technical support of the experts sitting here. From now until the end of this year, we will have another 3 workshops, and by the end of the year, we will produce a report, a summary report to summarize all the inputs that we have collected from the experts, from all of you. And for the second year of the project, we plan to have in-depth research on all these topics to be able to gather the information for one project document. And then the third year, we can implement all the knowledge from this summary report, the same way that we have worked with ACVN previously. So we hope to receive your continued support, and your inputs will be used and applied in the coming years of the project. I have prepared a lot of information about this project to share with you, but however, it's already late. So once again, I would like to express our sincere gratitude to all of you for being here until this time of the day. Thank all the international experts. Thanks, Professor Lawrence, and we hope to receive your continued support in the next workshops of this year, and also other activities of the project during the 3 years. Thank you.